Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. So just half a word. I mean, Rabbi Silber, space time on introductions. Rabbi Silber is a Nile of Sinai Academy. He is also a mechanech for many years, and again, he will share and talk with that. So
We'll try.
The point.
We'll try. So, the union of a tinus fasting, my reputation was, if you go through a fast day and you don't come out with anything concrete, you basically have committed a big sin. Because you tortured a Jew, namely yourself, that you didn't eat, you didn't drink, you didn't get any. What was the goal? What was the purpose? Just to read you from the Rambam and Hilchos Tainus, I think it's good, especially the last piece of the Tainus, you can still get it in. The Rambam says, the purpose of fasting, disconnect yourself from the physical world, L'oir halavavis, to awaken the hearts, V'ftach darkei tshuva, to open up some sort of path for tshuva. And by picking a particular event that happened in Jewish history in the past, like today, didn't really happen today, really happened on Shabbos, that a great leader of Jewish people, Gedalia, Ben Achikum, was murdered, unfortunately, by Jews. And that was basically the end of Jews in Israel at the time. So that was a terrible thing. So we're all going to mourn that, but at the same time, think in ourselves, what can I do to open up a personal path of tshuva? We're in the Aseret Yemei Tshuva. And the worst thing is to try to do it all. I saw these tshuva kits, complete guide to tshuva. I read the whole thing and you're good to go. And unfortunately, you usually end up with nothing. So what I would like to do maybe is just pick one or two things that I was thinking about that we could take out, especially in a shul like this. A lot of Torah goes out of here in Tefillah. I remember when I was a kid, my parents had a dream to climb Mount Washington, to go to New Hampshire and climb Mount. Everybody been there to Mount Washington? And when you get to the top, they give you a bumper sticker to put on your car. This car, right, climbed Mount Washington. There was only one problem. My parents' car would have never made up Mount Washington. So they rented a car. And when they got back, they put the bumper sticker on the old car. So you're driving around Borough Park, there's an old beat-up car that said, this car climbed Mount Washington. Many of us, it's funny, but we do the same thing with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Many of us could say we drove through Rosh Hashanah. We passed it. We're going to drive through Aseret Yemei Tshuva, and then many people, what's our goal? Somehow to get through Yom Kippur, and then to say, Baruch Hashem, it's over. I made it through. So you'll get a souvenir that you got through Rosh Hashanah, but you're coming out with a bumper sticker. It's better to pick something, just one thing, work on it, and this way you're taking the Rosh Hashanah with you into the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, and you take the Yom Kippur into the rest of the year. It's interesting that every Rabbi teaches this, that there's a couple of names to the Yom Tov. There's Yom Hadin, right? There's Yom Teruah, Day of Judgment, the Shofar. Then there's the name Rosh Hashanah. So the Maral says that it's interesting that the name that's stuck is Rosh Hashanah. You would think the more important, Rosh Hashanah just gives us a timeline that it happens to come out at the beginning of the year. It doesn't seem to capture the theme of the Yom Tov. Yom Hadin, Day of Judgment, that should have been the name that's the powerful one. So the Maral says something very interesting. Every name of every Jewish holiday captures the essence of the holiday. He says the word Hashanah, we know it, Shana means year, right? He brings a Gemara on Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara says, Adam HaRishon was created on Rosh Hashanah, according to one opinion. The world was created 5 days before. So why do we celebrate Rosh Hashanah on Rosh Hashanah? Because the world really didn't have any purpose till man was created. So the Maral says, when man was created, he's created with a purpose and a mission. You're in Gan Eden, guard this place, right? Whatever he work it and guard it. According to some, he means learning Torah. However you learn the guarding, right? And Hashem has to give you the tools how to guard it. So he has to give him the right environment. So Gan Eden was the environment for Adam Arishon to fulfill his mission. But he messed up. So when he messed up, Hashem said, okay, I'll give you a second chance. But now the mission changes. That's the key word there. The mission changes. And because the mission changes, the tools, the abilities you have, the goals till the end of the year are going to change as well. Chava's life changed. Adam had to do physical work. So if the celebration of Rosh Hashanah is about Adam Arishon, so he says the word Shana comes from the word Shinoi, change. That every year in Rosh Hashanah, we have to decide. Hashem's going to decide, what's your mission this year? What am I going to give you? Some people's mission is not too much, so they're not going to have too much health to fulfill the mission. Some people have a bigger mission, they need more health, they're going to need more money, more calmness in their lives. So every Rosh Hashanah, it's like Adam Rishon gets born again, every one of us, and we have a shinui, we have a change. That's the most important, and that's why he says that name stuck. Because every Rosh Hashanah we're going to change. We don't know what our mission is yet. We're davening to be able to see it. The hardest thing for man, especially a Jew, who's a thinking Jew, is the concept of changing yourself. I once heard from Rosh Hashiva, and today, anytime Rosh Hashiva says something, afterwards everybody goes, takes out their phones and checks it on Google, if it's accurate. So I checked it also. He said an interesting thing. If I was Russian, I would have known that. Wouldn't have had to check it. In the 1970s, the star Russian Jewish chess champion of the world was a guy by the name of Garry Kasparov. I think it was the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken. Besides being champion in Russia, it's a big thing. He was also a very arrogant person, very flamboyant person, and he had a lot to be arrogant about in the chess field. But the way he presented himself all the time, and I heard that in Russia he was treated also. Royalty, what did he do for the world actually? He just played chess. But there, that was a great thing. And around that time, IBM was developing the first, what they call it, a supercomputer. They had a special name for it. Their supercomputer. And their supercomputer now probably can do what my old cell phone was able to do. But then it was a big thing. How many things it could do at the same time? And they wanted to sell it to the world. So the way they were going to sell it to the world, they were going to challenge Garry Kasparov to a chess match. I believe it took place in Madison Square Garden. Now for him to come, they had to pay him a lot of money. The computer then couldn't be brought in, it had to be assembled there, brought in pieces. That's how big this supercomputer was. And they put together the computer. I saw pictures of it. They look like doctors wearing white coats, like surgeons, putting together the supercomputer that's going to challenge Garry Kasparov to the match. There was a lot of hype in the papers. They sold tickets. It was going to be broadcast back to the Soviet Union. Man against machine. Kasparov against the machine. He made sure to come in last. If everybody was seated, he wore a nice fur coat with a white, in Yiddish it's called a peltz, I don't know if there's such a word in Russian. A white fur. And after everybody came in, he made his appearance with music. And they came over to him, the head of IBM, shook his hand, and they said, "Can I take your coat?" And he said, "I won't be staying that long. No need to take my coat off," in his arrogant fashion. So he sits down and the game starts. I think it was 3 or 4 moves. I might be mistaken. 3 or 4 moves. And he beat the machine. Checkmate. It was a terrible embarrassment for IBM. He got up. If he had an ego before, this sent it to the roof. In 3, 4 moves, he beats IBM supercomputer. Well, they gave him the check and they made a big presentation. And he left. It was in all the papers. IBM, terrible. A year later, they offered him a rematch. They upgraded the supercomputer. First he said, "No, I already showed you, man. No, they double what we're going to give you then." Well, for money he came. And the same spiel when he walked in, he's not sitting down. This time, it's one move, two moves. And the machine's playing pretty good. So he called somebody and took his coat off. After a half hour, he took his jacket off. After an hour, the vest came off. And then he did something he never did before. In the middle of the match, the great Garry Kasparov. Nobody won anything yet. He got up, he said, I'm leaving. Everybody was shocked, stunned. It's being broadcast everywhere. In the middle of the match, he gets up and he's walking out the door. So they run after him and the head of IBM stops him. He says, have we offended you? Have you done anything wrong? He turned around, he said, and this is what the Yeshiva brought out, powerful point. He said, the first time I played against a machine. Now I realized that I was playing what you did. They took every single move that Kasparov had ever made in any one of his matches, and they programmed it in. He says, a machine I could beat. Kasparov I can't beat. This I can't do. And I realized that I was playing, that I'm playing, I can't beat myself. The hardest person to change, a lot of people have ideas how to change everybody else. But Rosh Hashanah, the hardest idea is how do you change yourself? The toughest battle in the world is to take something you know you're not doing right and change yourself. So to pick one thing, we said it both days on Rosh Hashanah. We just said it by Mincha now. One of the most important aspects, because if you don't have this really down pat, you're not really going to get into the Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. We say in Aleinu, V'yodata hayom, you should know today, V'hashivoyse elav avecha, get it into your heart, Kashem Elokim. The idea of knowing, believing is one thing. Knowing, right? Nobody needs to convince them, believe that they're hungry right now. You know it. That's the level you need to work on yourself, that you know that there's a creator who created the world. You know that he's in control of the world, and you know and believe it. If I would ask everybody in the room, go into every shul, does everybody believe there's a guy? Everybody's going to raise their hands, yes. Right? It's very easy to say. But, as my mashgiach once said, there was a famous tightrope walker, maybe you heard of him. He's the first guy, must have been a little mashugga in the head for what he did. He walked across Niagara Falls, Charles Blondin. It was in the early 1900s. He was a Frenchman. Some of the stuff he did there, it doesn't make sense how it was done. To walk across Niagara Falls on a tightrope. If you read about it, the stuff he did, crazy. People from both sides, from the Canadian side and the American side, came to watch. They were even betting. Today would have been major online betting. Then there was just betting. Where he's going to die. Is he going to die on the American side or the Canadian side? It's a big distance across, and the height. There's a whole story how he even got the rope to the other side. It wasn't simple. He was involved in that too. So the day came. Everybody's there. And before he goes across, they get the audience quiet, and he screams out, do you believe that I can make it to the other side? And everybody screamed, yes, because they want to see him do it. And he walked across like he was walking on air to the other side. Then he turned to the Canadian side. You believe? He walked back. The place went wild. He walked across the entire Niagara Falls. Then he said, do you believe that I can walk across holding on my shoulders a stick with 2 pails of water to walk across the entire Niagara Falls? Everybody screamed, yes, we believe. So he did it. There's a picture of him walking across. He offered that on the way he was going to hold a little stove and fry an omelet and throw it to people that were watching on the bottom while he's walking across a tightrope. He went through stunt after stunt. And each time before he did it, he asked them, do you believe? And everybody screamed, I believe. Then he took a wheelbarrow, filled it up with rocks, put the wheelbarrow on. Now you can't balance all the wheels on the tightrope. Only one wheel is going on there. So he has to balance himself while he's pushing across the wheelbarrow with one wheel, full of rocks. And he was a shtickle entertainer also, so in the middle he made like he's about to fall, and everybody, and he made it across. He did it both ways. And now for my final feat, he says. He says, do you believe that I could push a human being in this wheelbarrow across to the other side? And everybody screamed, yes, we believe. See, he said, I'm coming down the ladder, I'm looking for one volunteer. I want one volunteer. And there was silence. There was silence. He said, but you all screamed you believe. Come on, one person. The Canadian side, the American side. Finally, the story goes, one old lady, an old lady, raised her hand. He says, I believe, I'll do it. And people tried to talk her out of it. No, no, no. I said I believe. I believe. And people thought, like, he's so cruel to take an old lady, risk her life. No, she wants to do it. So they had to help her up the ladder to the top of the thing. He put her in the wheelbarrow, and he pushed her across. Who was the old lady? His mother. The only one that really believed. Thousands of people kept screaming, I believe, I believe. But when it came to the actual, to see if you really believe, there was silence. How many of us really, really believe that when you're standing in shul or these starts you made tshuva, that things that you're going to do and accept upon yourself are actually going to change your life for this year? Life and death, sickness and poor. You really believe it? Or it's a nice theory. It's something you need to work on. It doesn't come natural. We're born with it. Inside neshama has it. But it's covered with layers and layers of the outside world. So the trick is to dig deep into yourself and pull out the idea that I believe. You know, there was a famous court case where somebody was accused of murder. There were witnesses. There's no way that he's going to get off from this trial. But he had money. So he hired one of the top lawyers to defend him. Paid him a lot of money. Came to the trial. The prosecutor brought up one witness. Can you point out who the murderer is? He said, yeah, one after the other. And the judge asked the defense attorney, who he paid so much money for each time, you have anything to say? No. For this, I paid him the money. Finally, after all the witnesses were brought, the defense attorney says, I'd like to say a few words. And this is what I got up and said in front of the whole audience. He said, Your Honor, in order to convict my client, it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt that he is the murderer. I will prove to you that nobody in the courtroom here, especially the jury, believes beyond a reasonable doubt that he's the murderer. You know how I'll prove it? This was 11 o'clock. He says, because at 12 o'clock, exactly at 12 o'clock, through those doors in the courtroom, the victim himself is going to walk in. The person that you say he killed is going to walk in these very doors. And he sat down. This is defense that he paid all that money for. And everybody's waiting. You know how long an hour takes when you're watching the clock tick? And the judge and everybody keeps looking at that door. And it's a minute to 12. There wasn't an eye that's not glued to the door to see. Because he said, 12 o'clock, the victim who's supposed to be there is going to walk in through that door. What do you think happened at 12 o'clock? Nobody walked in the door. And the judge looks at him. What's going on? He says, Your Honor, I want to tell you something. I was watching, and you could check these cameras in the courtroom. Everybody, including you, Your Honor, was looking at the door the whole time, till the last second, to see if he's walking in the door. Every member of the jury kept looking to the door. If they really believed beyond a shadow of a doubt that my client is guilty, they wouldn't have looked at the door. The fact that they're looking means they didn't believe 100%. And therefore, you cannot convict them. There was a tremendous uproar, and the judge shook his head. Everybody looked. You're right, I looked. And it looked like he's getting off. And he's shaking the guy's hands, congratulating you. You're worth every penny that I'm going to pay you. Then the judge offers one last chance to the prosecutor. What do you have to say? He's right. The entire jury was looking at the door. There's no way they could say beyond a reasonable doubt. They had a lot of doubt. For 1 hour, they kept checking the door. The prosecutor says, listen, I want to compliment the defense attorney. Amazing presentation. But Your Honor, there's one thing that none of you noticed, and I noticed. That there was one person in the courtroom, not once did he turn around to look at the door. Not once. And the reason why he didn't look at the door is because he knew that the guy's not, he doesn't care if everybody else is looking. He knew the emes, that he's not coming, and that's the guy who's accused of murder. Because when you know something, you know it to your core, that it's truth, what everybody else is doing, it's not going to change you. You're not going to look. When you believe that there's a God who runs the world, and that God is in charge of your life, you won't be affected by what's going on out there. You won't be affected by questions that you have. I know the emes. And therefore, if you could just take one thing from this tainus to work on your emunah, believe it, but make it real, not some, abstract theory. Make it as real as the guy who was sitting in that courtroom. The greatest thing that goes on in this shul that we're going to be working on, this whole month is about this, is davening, tefillah. A lot of people daven. Some of us even have translations when we read the words. But we don't realize, many of us, what an amazing, powerful, effective tool we have with davening. And part of the avodah is believe in the power of your davening. If you look at the Rambam, how do we even know that there's a whole concept of tefillah? Where does it say in the Torah about davening? Look at the whole Torah, you're not going to find the word davening. The Rambam says, because it says, "U'la'avdoi b'chol levavchem," serving with your heart. The Rambam says, "Eis avodah shebelezu tefillah." The avodah of the heart is your tefillah. So how should you daven? So this is what the Rambam says: daven every day, say the praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then ask your needs, and then thank for what you got. All in that order. Even before you got it. First, praise Hashem. Ask for what you need, and then thanks for what you got. That means I have to believe so powerful in my prayer that even before anything happened, part of my prayer is I'm thanking already for what I got. Not to have to wait. I read an interesting story. There was a Chabad rabbi who had a shul somewhere in Jersey, and the shul was built in a non-residential neighborhood, so a lot of empty real estate nearby. And one day they see signs going up, they're boarding up across from the shul. So he went over to see what's going on. So he meets the owner of the property. The guy just bought the property. The rabbi says, I'm the rabbi of the synagogue across the street. What's going on? So I'm building a bar and a disco here. So the rabbi says, come on, right across from the synagogue. Maybe you could reconsider. He says, listen, Rabbi, I don't believe any of that stuff. I'm an atheist. So you guys are just wasting your time with the praying. I'll make you an offer even for your building, if you want. You're just wasting your time. So the rabbi said, we're going to fight you in court. In the meantime, they hung up signs in the shul that they can have every day an extra 10 minutes added to the davening. To daven, because imagine what's going to be like. You're walking out of davening and you can hear the music from the disco right across the street. And drunk guys coming out of the bar. We have to daven. Hashem should stop this somehow. And people were coming to the davening. There were signs outside the shul. Come daven for the failure of the project across from the shul. And one time they were davening. It was Shabbos. It was a terrible storm. The building was already 3/4 of the way up. There's a lot of lightning and thunder. And the lightning hit that building that we're building. And the whole thing caught fire. The disco building burnt down. And there was like a yontif in the shul. It was unbelievable. Till a couple of days later, the rabbi got a letter in the mail that the atheist from the property is suing the shul. Why is he suing the shul? Because they prayed that something happened to his shul, to his disco, and the disco burned down. So came to court. Well, the rabbi had a lawyer get up and say, okay, it's a silly lawsuit. It's a frivolous lawsuit. You claim that our prayer burnt down your thing? And the atheist got up and said, I'm telling you, Judge, their prayer destroyed my shul. So the judge, after a couple minutes, says, I never had such a strange case. I have an atheist who believes in the power of prayer of the shul, and I have a shul claiming that their prayer didn't do anything. Even though they were davening and davening and davening. Because if we don't realize the power of our own prayer, so we say words. But if you ask you afterwards, when something good happened, why did it happen? Because I davened. It happened. To connect your davening with your, like the Rambam says, right afterwards, ask and then say thank you. Don't think that it's two separate things. There's a woman who lives, and I have relatives in Israel who checked it out. There's a woman who lives in a place called Gush Etzion. I don't know if you know where that is. One of these Moshavim in Eretz Yisrael. The name she uses is Rita, but I heard it's not her real name. She's driving on one of the main highways. I think it's called 1. And traffic came to a stop. And what happened? She looks on the side and she sees a terrible accident. This helicopter's ambulance. So everybody stops. She got out of a thing. What does a Jew do when you see an accident? Probably somebody Jew. So today, unfortunately, people take out their phones, start taking pictures. This nice Jewish lady took out a tilim and started to daven. He says, who knows? And then she saw, they took a sheet and they covered the person. And then the traffic, she got, was breaking up. She got in a car and continued and felt so bad. Who knows? Is this a mother of children? Is this a father? Who knows? Somebody just lost their life in a simple thing like an accident, like a car accident. 2 months later, true story, 2 months later, she gets a call to her house. Is your name Rita? She says, yes. Were you on the highway that day when there was a terrible accident? She says, yeah, how do you know? She says, I know because I'm the person that was lying on the floor being covered up. How could you be that person? And this is what she told her and how she got a hold of her. She says, I was lying on the floor and they basically pronounced me dead. And she said, I felt, you have these, what do they call them, out-of-body experiences? I felt my body going up. And I felt myself being pulled up. And then I saw from across the road, I saw letters, Hebrew letters, coming, and they circled me, she says, and wrapped around my body. And all of a sudden I felt very warm, and then I felt somebody uncovering my thing, and they felt the pulse and they revived me. She says, how did you find me? He says, because one of my friends was standing next to you when you were talking. And you spoke with her 2 minutes, you told her your name, you felt so bad, you told her the whole story. Once I had a first name, I searched and searched. He says, you mean my tilling that I said there saved you? He says, I saw the letters that you were davening. I saw the letters coming and wrapping around me. Such a person, you don't have to convince what our davening does. We just don't know what a powerful weapon we have when we're davening. Every word we're saying is creating powerful things. I'll leave you around time, 2 minutes. Every shul, I'm sure Yisrael will appreciate what it means, a budget of a shul. There's a shul in Marlborough, New Jersey. The shul was in bad shape. The roof had a leak. Projects that you keep pushing off. Hopefully by the Yisker appeal, money will come in. The rabbi there is sitting in his shul, and a guy walks in, sits down and says, Rabbi, I'd like to give a donation to the shul. And picture this, you're the rabbi, this guy comes in and says, I'd like to give a donation to the shul. How much do you need, Rabbi? Now you're thinking like this, if I ask him for too little, you feel stupid. Ask too much. So what do you do? So he looked at the guy, the way he's dressed. And while he's talking, he looked out the window, he saw a nice car. He said, if I ask for $1 million, obviously not. 50,000, he asked for $100,000. And he said exactly, he showed where the roof is leaking, the floor needs repair. No problem. Takes out a check right on the spot, writes out a check for $100,000, made out to the shul. Now what's the question you definitely are dying to ask him if you're the rabbi? He never saw this guy before. Guy walks into your shul, offers to give you a check like this. But how do you ask in a nice way? So finally on the way out, he thanked him. He said, just curious. Everybody has their inspiration. What inspired you pick our shul since you're not a member. I don't believe I've ever seen you in the shul here before. What inspired you to come in and give such a wonderful gift? He said, I'll tell you the truth. He says, he had a business, a couple of businesses in New Jersey for many years. Never been to a synagogue at all. He said, I didn't know what it means to have a conversation with God. It felt kind of strange. Who am I talking to? I didn't really believe in it. He said, then when me and my wife we hit retirement age, I told my wife, there's something I want to do. I want to go see Israel. I want to see the Holy Land. Never been there. And they told him, the tour guide, when he got there, told him, you got to go to the Kotel. He said, what do you do there? Go. People tell you what to do. You got to go there. Explain to them what it is. So he came to the Kotel there, He didn't really know what to do. They told him, write your name on a paper and stuff it in the hole. That took him about a half a minute. He's about to walk away, and to his right, he sees a Yerushalmi guy standing. He's got his hands on the wall, his face is on the wall, and he's talking as if he's having a conversation with somebody sitting next to him. He says, Shem, listen, you know what I've been doing. I have no more room for my kids in the apartment. I can't pay the tuition, and I'm trying to work. And he's talking and talking. He says, this guy says, I was mesmerized. This is a guy who's really talking to God. And then he said some words, and he cried, and then he smiled. He said, I couldn't walk away. I watched and watched and watched. And then he says, you know what I did? I went up to my wife, and I said, today I saw what praying is about. He said, when I get back to Jersey, I'm going to find a synagogue where a guy like him would pray, and that's where I'm putting my money. He says, the first place I went to was the conservative temple. I went there on a Friday night. I got there just in time. He said they were having bingo. Friday night oneg, they have bingo with music and dancing. I kept thinking, this doesn't look like the kind of place that the guy by the wall, doesn't look like prayer at all. So I looked, and this was the next synagogue. You didn't see me, Rabbi. I was here Friday night. I stood in the back. And I saw a couple of people, and they looked like they were talking to God. I said, this is the place where I'm putting my money. And you have to imagine what's going to happen after 120 years. The Yerushalmi guy goes up to heaven, and this Jersey guy goes up to heaven. The Yerushalmi guy, they're going to give him his Gan Eden, and then they're going to say, we also want to give you an extra portion in Gan Eden because you donated $100,000 to a shul in Marlboro, New Jersey. What's the guy going to say? What's a Marlboro, New Jersey? What is that? They say, but you inspired with your davening somebody else. And now the Jersey guy comes up, and you have to understand what happened with that guy. I checked with somebody. This guy who gave the money to the shul started coming to the shul. Because he started coming to the shul, his kids also. And now his kids are learning in yeshiva. All because one guy davened and didn't put on a show, but believed in the power of his davening, to the point where I'm having a conversation with God. So when you're going to daven Ma'ariv tonight, and the rest of Seres Yemei Tshuva, and on Yom Kippur, you have to understand, you're not just saying words. You have something very powerful with you. Believe in every word you're saying that has an effect. You should all have a Chasiva v'Chasima Toiva. Thank you for listening.